Howdy, howdy, and welcome to Outside In, the podcast that talks to the thought leaders that are shaping the world of business and legal process outsourcing. I'm your host, Brad Burgess, a 20-year marketing veteran of the process outsourcing world. In each episode, I'm honored to talk to the thought leaders who help shape how companies and law firms like yours receive the latest and greatest service when outsourcing your office support services. In today's episode, I'm excited to be talking to Connie Snow, the National Director of Reporting Operations with IST Management Services. Connie is a veteran of the court reporting industry, and she's going to talk to us today about how the world of depositions has changed over the past year and what the future of reporting is going to look like. Connie, welcome to the Outside In podcast. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm actually joining you guys from IST's corporate office in Atlanta, Georgia.
Excellent. And Connie, can you give us a quick overview of your background in court reporting?
Absolutely. I have over 13 years experience in the court reporting industry. I've came from other companies like Esquire and Veritex. I actually helped open the Veritex Atlanta office in 2013, I do believe. I've spent the 13 years of my career understanding court reporting as a whole in regards to the operational aspect for, getting in the client request to billing it out, understanding our court reporters and our clients' needs, and growing our reporter networks, not just for IST, but with other previous companies as well. So I have a pretty good national contact base when it comes to our court reporters, videographers, and court reporting firms.
Excellent. This was actually a question I was going to ask later in, but because you talked about that base and building that base while you started, obviously one of the biggest things that people are talking about is that there's a national shortage in court reporting. How does IST help to bring on the best reporters for our clients when there is that shortage?
So that's a good question. There is a national shortage. The shortage is only, while it's impacting everybody nationally, it really has some key areas where the impact is felt more significantly, such as in Texas and California. So our goal at IST is to keep bringing on qualified court reporters, and we do that by verifying their certifications. We ask for some references, and we also ask them to submit some sample transcripts so we can view their formatting and whatnot to make sure that they know what they're doing with their work product. In addition, we're looking at long-term solutions to help with the shortage. And some of those might be actually using the remote platform of depositions, to do them remotely. A lot of our court reporters now have spent the past year during COVID getting certified in multiple states. So you, for example, could have a court reporter in Georgia who's certified in Florida, Texas, and California, and would be able to take those depositions remotely to help alleviate some of the shortage problems. That being said, though, that really is dependent on how each state's courts are going to govern that. So while right now we're allowed to have remote depositions happening, some states are only going to allow it on a temporary basis. They are anticipating in-person to come back, and they're not going to permit remote. So we're looking at ways that maybe hopefully the states will keep the remote in place, and we can utilize that to help with the shortage. And if not, we're going to have to start looking at other methods. What those are, I'm not quite sure yet, but we're definitely investigating it. We're keeping our eyes on the market. We're keeping our pulse on it so that we can change with it as it changes.
Excellent. And so playing off of that, and as we were talking about with that, so with the remote, obviously when the pandemic happened, it changed the whole world. It changed the world of litigation greatly. And there was that big push to the remote world. How has that push been successful, and what lessons have we learned from that we can move as we move forward outside of the pandemic and improving court reporting?
So that's a good question. So when this happened, remote depositions had actually already been in play with most court reporting firms for years prior to COVID. It just wasn't being utilized. Again, going back to those states that required the court reporter to be physically there to verify the testimony, you couldn't utilize that method if you wanted to. However, since COVID, we've had no choice but to do it. So in the beginning, it was a challenge, not just for IST, but all court reporting firms alike, to get the clients on board. We had a lot of clients who were stalling their depositions because they were hoping that COVID would go away in 30, 60 days. And they were hoping they wouldn't have to embrace this remote technology because they really didn't want to have to do so. But as time went on, we all realized that we weren't going to see an end in sight in the near future. So it had to get they had to adapt to it quickly. And part of the things that IST has had to do is we've had to get on demos with our clients and train them on how to use these tools and how for these tools to be effective for them in regards to introducing exhibits to clients, in regards to, making sure that you're following the right state parameters in regards to swearing in a witness. So I'll give you a good example. I could be a law firm, let's say in Texas, right? But the witness I was going to depose is in Georgia. You would want to ask certain questions to make sure that you're getting the right person to certify that record, meaning you're getting a Georgia court reporter to do it remotely to certify that record, not a Texas court reporter from where the firm originates. We've had to teach clients the best practices. You'd be surprised how many witnesses think that a cell phone is adequate to testimony.
Right.
It isn't. While remote platforms give you that availability to use your cell phone, could you imagine trying to look at exhibits on your cell phone while being, questioned about what those materials are? So we've had to really get not just the client's way of thinking changed, meaning, you can't just say, all right, everybody jump on a remote platform. Hey, witness one over here, if you're on a cell phone, that's going to work through this. We're going to introduce 100 Excel sheets and we're going to want you to verify the data on it. So there's been a lot of adjustment for the clients more so than the court reporting firms. And I'd like to say that IST has done a great job educating our clients and helping them understand how this is going to work best for them and how they can make their deposition successful.
Yeah, and so you talked about the tools. So one of the things I wanted, we're on our conversation today on a WebEx, but is a WebEx or a Zoom the right tool for that, or are there better tools that are specifically designed for court reporting that can help improve that process?
So that's a good question. My answer to that is there really isn't a right tool. The tool really depends on the client, their needs, and the type of deposition they're doing. So if I'm a personal injury attorney, typically in personal injury depositions, you're probably going to introduce a few exhibits. There's not going to be a whole lot of them. And cost is a really big factor. In those cases with those attorneys, they would prefer a Zoom. It's cheaper for them. It's more effective on cost. They're not going to be introducing a lot of exhibits. The deposition's maybe going to go 1 to 2 hours. But when you get into those more complex litigations, like a construction defect or contract disputes, what have you, or even some heavy medical malpractice cases, you're going to want to find a tool that's more robust because you're going to want to have something that's going to give you the tools to have your exhibits there ahead of time. Because back in a traditional deposition, you would hand the court reporter the exhibits. As you introduce them, the court reporter would mark an exhibit sticker on it and then submit it into the record. But if the court reporter's physically not there and she can't physically touch those documents, how do you give those tools to a client? The court reporter can't type down the deposition and mark an exhibit when it's going remote. Whereas in previous days, she'd be typing, the attorney would introduce the exhibit, she would stop what she's doing, she'd put the sticker on, the attorney would see that she's stopping, so he would stop the questioning. She'd put the sticker on and then proceed back to taking down that testimony. Whereas remote, you can't really put that back on a court reporter anymore. So one of the tools that IST has is live litigation. And that tool offers a lot more robust tools. It gives the client the availability to upload their exhibits ahead of time and to keep them secure and private until they're ready to introduce them. When we talk about exhibits, you have to look at exhibits like you're playing poker, your poker hand, right? You don't want to necessarily introduce your hand until you're ready to, because you don't know how that line of questioning is going to go. There's no way that the testimony is going to go exactly the way you predict it. You're looking for ways that you can catch your witness off guard. Maybe you want to see if you could impeach them. Maybe they said something on a previous testimony and you have that document ready and you don't want anybody to know you have that document. You want to catch them off guard with it. With the tool of live litigation, it gives you that. It allows you to have that secured until you're ready to introduce it. And then once you introduce it, it gives the attorney the tools to mark it, highlight it, draw attention to it, and ultimately put that exhibit sticker on it. So then it can be introduced into the record for the court reporter to have later, and then to be produced with the transcript.
Excellent. So clearly, depositions are very nuanced, and that interaction between the court reporter and the attorneys is very nuanced in how it works. So, what are some of the other issues that, when we've moved into this remote world, that are affecting court reporters and keeping them from being as successful as they were in a live deposition?
Some of them are the knowledge that people have just with technology itself. Because we can set everything up, we can get everything perfect, but we're not in your home. So we don't know what your Wi-Fi strength is, right? And we can't force you to test. We can ask you to test, we can request you to test, we can beg you to test, we want you to test. But ultimately, it does fall on the end user, right? So some of those challenges are the end users not doing what they need to do on to make sure that everything's successful, and either waiting to the last minute. And when you wait to the last minute and you're preparing for a deposition, you can imagine that it then creates a whole ball of stress for you. And then things aren't going to go as right as you had hoped they would. Going back to the whole, let's not use a cell phone. I mean, I've actually seen some depositions where I've been on, I moderate them in the beginning to make sure we get off to a good start, where the witness was in his car. And I'm like, how is this going to work? How is this going to be successful?
Right.
And for the court reporter, that's equally stressful for her, because if you're in a car and you're driving and you're giving testimony, the audio is only as good as it's going to get, depending on how you have your setup going. So you're making it more of a challenge for that court reporter to get your testimony down accurately. So those are some of the challenges the court reporters have faced, and some of the challenges the clients have faced. It really just comes down to like knowing your technology capabilities, having people to go to for assistance, which we pride ourselves at IST that we're always on point and we are on call to help solve those technical issues that happen. We did a deposition a couple months ago, and the deponent was 95 years old. So as you can imagine, 95, he had no idea how Wi-Fi worked. He had no idea how anything worked. We worked with our IT team, and we secured like a very large screen iPad, right? And I set everything up, had it preset, ready to go, had it sent to him. I even had instructions that were blew up and like, high bold print so that he could see it easily. And was even on the phone with him and realized that he was going to have a hard time even connecting it. We even sent him down a hotspot. We had everything preset. And he like just turning it on was just a challenge. So then we had to work with our local sales rep in that area. Our sales rep actually did everything within COVID practice measures and safety, got permission from all parties involved. And he actually sat at the depot at the witness's house for 8 hours while he was testifying to help him get through the challenges. Because as you can imagine, an iPad battery goes low. This gentleman couldn't even figure out how to plug in the adapter to charge it. So we had somebody on standby the whole time, wearing gloves, mask, safe distance apart, to help this gentleman get through this testimony.
Well, that's awesome. That's just that amazing level of customer service that you always want to see from a company, and it's great that IST has that national sales force, so they're able to step in when there's those type of issues. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the challenges, but I have to imagine that the virtual depositions have had a lot of pros too. What are some of those?
Well, the pros are it's cutting down on travel costs for the clients. So what we're hoping in the future is if the states permit it, attorneys are really going to want to utilize it more versus going out of town. Because going back to my example earlier, where the firm could be in Texas, but the witness is in Georgia. Pre-COVID, that attorney was taking a plane, which was coming out of the settlement costs and over his overhead costs as well, and flying down here to depose the witness. To whereas now that they are embracing the remote technology, keep in mind, this has been out for years. This is not something that's just completely new. It's just something that the attorneys really have never dabbled in until now. That they will start to embrace it to at least alleviate their travel costs. So that's a bonus. The other bonus for our clients and our court reporters and videographers is not sitting in traffic. When a court reporter would have to get up, and let's say she has a 9 a.m. depot in Atlanta, Georgia, and she lives 30 minutes outside of Atlanta. We know for us that live in Georgia, what traffic is like in Atlanta.
Oh, absolutely.
You're looking at like an hour and a half drive just to get to the deposition location. So the court reporters are enjoying that. On top of that, you also are seeing a quicker turn-in time of transcripts. So by industry standards, 10 business days, unless it's expedited, is your normal standard for delivery of a transcript. Court reporters usually would get it in on the 8th, maybe 10th business day, and we would turn it around. But now that court reporters aren't driving in traffic so much, they're able to spend more time getting those transcripts complete. The other benefit is if you have a job on the same day, one that starts at 10, but it's going to end at noon, and another one that starts at 3, it's going to end at 5. You used to have to find 2 court reporters to cover that one job, and with a shortage, that's double the hassle, right? But with remotes, you can look at your schedules and look at your court reporters and be like, hey, I have you on a Zoom that's going to end at this time, and can you pick up the next Zoom or live litigation or whatever remote platform we're using and pick up the next depo? And they're like, yeah, no brainer. So they're making more money. We're getting more coverage. We're just getting turned in faster. People are less stressed because they're not driving. Attorneys are saving money because they're not spending travel costs. And I'm pretty sure they're enjoying the fact that they're not driving either. So there are a lot of wins to it.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds amazing. I love what you said about how that's a way that it can help that shortage as we work towards training additional court reporters and everything. What other technologies do you think we might see introduced? I would imagine that this was an industry that didn't have a lot of technological change for a lot of years, and then COVID has created a huge technology boon into it. Do you think there's gonna, as people are now embracing this more in the deposition world, we might see additional technologies rolled out?
It's possible. What those are yet, I'm not quite sure. We watch, like I said, we watch what the trends are happening in the industry, and we are trying to follow those trends and get in with them. But going back to your statement about it not being a really technological field in the beginning, it actually has been. Court reporters are pretty tech savvy. Their equipment and the things that they have to do just to make, for example, real time happen. Real time is when, the court reporter is typing, and as she's typing it, you see it live through a feed on a screen. Real time's been around for a long time. So court reporters have already been on the gear of technology because they have to. They always are having to improve their softwares, the way that they do real time, if they are real time reporters, how they grab in their audio backups in order to back up towards it so that they can verify the transcript. So do I see a lot more trends happening with this? I do when it comes to Zoom. So going back to live litigation, you already got those built-in bells and whistles. With Zoom, we see programs that are coming out that can be piggybacked on to Zoom that have exhibit management software programs. Towards live litigation already has a built-in one. There are programs coming out you can piggyback off of Zoom that have that same capability. And one of those that we are actually looking at partnering with right now is called Exhibit View. We've already been utilizing it in our Georgia market. The program is owned by one of our videographers. So he has started getting on these Zooms, and when the client requests Zoom, and he starts introducing the exhibits using this program, and because of him, we now have more client requests to utilize his software. So it's something that we're already engaging in conversations with the partner on. But other than that, I don't see much more changes.
Excellent. I love you. You just mentioned videographers, and obviously that's a large part of depositions. How has their role changed, and how have they adapted during the pandemic?
They've adapted a lot quicker than most people have, believe it or not. So going back to this tool's been out forever, right? And clients weren't really using it. Court reporters were using it very rarely. In my experience, back when virtuals came out, I probably did 2 or 3 virtuals a year. So it wasn't a technology that court reporters were embracing either. Not only did we have to change our train our clients, we also had to help our court reporters grow. Some were already on top of it, but some of them needed some assistance. Our videographers, though, man, they were already on it and looking out tools and looking at how to make this work for them. And some of my videographers now can tell me that they are doing 4 Zoom depositions at one time. And you're like, how is that possible? Like, how are you doing off 4? And they're like, it's so easy when it's remote, and with the capabilities of Zoom and even live litigation, they're able to run multiple PCs at once. And as long as they're just on, gauging at the record, so when they have to stop recording and start recording and do the read on at the beginning, they're able to do a lot more with it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And doing four at one time, they're more talented than me then, that's for sure. Well, this has been awesome and super informative. And I mean, obviously the pandemic's not been a great thing, but it might have been that nudge that was needed to help start us down this path of remote depositions being more common, because it does have a lot of pros and a lot of opportunities. Is going to be great. But I'm just curious, as we move out of this, what's that one lesson you've learned? Doesn't have to be about the technology or whatever. The one lesson you've learned on court reporting during the pandemic that you think you'll be able to use moving forward?
I think that we should always be prepared for things that we thought would never happen, because not being prepared essentially shut down our industry for a couple of months, and the layoffs were massive. If our clients and if us as court reporting firms had already been prepared, again, we were prepared, we had the tool, but we weren't prepared to get it out to the market that quickly because we didn't have to. There was no rush. We just got to be prepared. We have to stay on the forefront of things. We can't sit there and wait for, well, what ifs? I mean, that's a big part of the pandemic now, was that as a whole in society, everybody just kept watching, going, well, what are we going to do? And that not taking that action is what's led us where we're at now. So if we're productive and we're proactive and we're looking at things that could happen, not just pandemic wise, but we also have to worry about natural disasters. In Texas last month, everybody knows what happened in Texas. The snowstorm happened and it crushed the court reporting industry there as well. So not only were they recovering from a national pandemic, now they are now trying to recover from a massive lost amount of work because of the storms and whatnot.
Right.
So just learning how to be ahead of it so that we can guard our revenue and our employees and our court reporters and our videographers, so everybody stays employed and everybody is not going through challenges in life at the same time. That's the biggest thing I can take away from this.
No, that's fantastic. And I totally hear what you're saying. I think that is something that we're going to see, is people are learning that it's worth the investment before things happen to start thinking about those, building those disaster plans and figuring out what the next cutting edge thing is, so that when it happens, you're prepared. So,
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the questions I have. This has been so informative. I just want to thank you again for taking time out of your busy day and coming down here to talk to us.
Thanks, Brad, and thanks, everybody. I enjoyed it too.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Outside In, your source for all the latest happenings in the world of business and legal process outsourcing. I want to thank Connie Snow for taking time out of her busy day to talk to us about how the court reporting world has changed and will continue to change in the coming years. To learn more about how IST can help you, go to istmanagement.com. If you like what you heard and you want to learn more about the latest business and legal processing outsourcing trends, please subscribe to the podcast.